The Valley Current.
Everything looks good.
No, I feel okay.
You're living in Xanadu, right? We were talking about this big ruling, and I'll just start by saying this CASA case, I always thought was kind of a weird acceptance by the Supreme Court because it involves this birthright citizenship, but the question that they accepted was, well, let's decide how much power district judges have, because of course, most district judges think they have like global power, not even just power in the U.S. They think they have a lot of power. They think they have a lot of power.
Well, the majority thinks, and I think that is really kind of crazy.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah,
and not only that, it's a power that's being used more and more and more frequently. Trump thinks the courts are picking on him because they're un-American and all this crazy crap. But the fact is, if Harris had gotten in, there would have been a couple of dozen injunctions against her. It's just a recipe for paralysis, no matter who is in, because there are 675 of these characters who can issue these things, and you can find one to do it. In this case, it's pretty obvious that the policy being complained of is way illegitimate. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind about that. But this power is not restricted to slam dunks, obviously. It can be used in anything, and it is used in anything. So I think it's high time they reined it in. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, I want to put on the record something that I said to you, and you said, well, why doesn't the ruling even mention this? You know, injunctions in civil cases, which is really what this is, are governed by Rule 65. And Rule 65 has some sweeping language about the way in which parties who act in concert with, like, it's very broadly worded,
right,
to suggest that, if you enter an injunction and then somebody kind of interferes with the scope of the injunction, that person can be held potentially, if they have notice, they could be held potentially in contempt for engaging in conduct that is essentially interfering with the injunction.
Yes, if they're parties, and if they're not parties, the district court binds them anyway. That's the point.
Right. So in many ways, they don't touch Rule 65, which is the congressional rule bestowing on district judges, and to some degree, you could argue, appellate judges too, because they effectively decide whether these injunctions are good or not, what the effect is of an injunction on someone who's not a party. Because it says in Part 65(2)(c), persons bound, the order, meaning the injunction, binds only the following who receive actual notice of it by personal service or otherwise. The parties, A, but then there's B and C. B is the parties, officers, agents, servants, employees, and attorneys. Okay, so that's people who aren't technically parties, but they're bound. And then C, and this is my point that I was trying to make to you, other persons who are in active concert or participation with anyone described in this rule, meaning party or an attorney or agent or officer. So these third parties, like in intellectual property cases, if you win an injunction that says this trademark good can't be distributed anymore because you copied, Mickey Mouse or something, and Disney wins, or whoever now owns Mickey Mouse, I think it's Disney, wins an injunction, preliminary injunction even, that says, hey, I find probable success and irreparable harm and whatnot, and I, as a district judge, enjoin you and your officers, employees, attorneys, and so on, and all who act in concert with it. And then there's some downstream distributor that still has, copies of this toy that happens to be, Mickey Mouse. They get served with a copy of that injunction. They're bound. They're bound.
Okay,
They're bound, right?
But they are persons with some relationship to the problem. So if I'm a movie theater owner and I show a film in derogation of the injunction, I can be held in contempt. I got that. But if I'm Joe Schmo, that's a totally different matter.
So you could argue they could have decided this just as
I'm the guy who's I'm the guy who bought a ticket to sit in the audience of the movie, and now I'm in contempt of court?
Right.
I mean, come on.
Right. Well, that's kind of the big question mark is when they enter these injunctions, are they even circuit specific? Because we know different circuits take different views in certain cases, right? And there is a view, the one circuit that's supposed to be the one circuit only for patents, which it is, the federal circuit. There's a view within the federal circuit even that maybe the federal circuit was a bad idea because there isn't enough diversity of opinion.
I would have said just the opposite. There are some countries that have constitutional courts that exist solely in order to take up questions like these. And rather than have 675 collection of who knows who, maybe it would be better to have it centralized and then some people who have some idea what they're doing. What do you think?
Well, we have...
Not that it's going to happen, but what do you think?
No, well, we have in New York right now, they've decided to create a commercial court that just does like uniform commercial code cases in New York. And they're considered like the specialty court for business cases. That exists in Texas. I think it exists in Delaware as well. Maybe some places in California in state court have it. In the federal courts, the federal district judges pretty much handle everything from soup to nuts. I mean, one day they could be doing a criminal case. Yeah. The next day they're doing a sexual harassment case. The next day they're doing some sort of ERISA case. I mean, they have to be conversant with so many things. And it's hard to imagine.
It's not that my problem is not that their jurisdiction is general. It's that there are so many of them. Isn't it an open invitation to forum shopping?
Well, that for sure.
I mean,
that we know.
I mean, no wonder this case comes from the District of Massachusetts.
Right.
And if Harris were in, there'd be some case in Alabama.
Right. I mean, this happens all the time.
So it's not really forum shopping, but with the universal effect. So it's a wonder that any policy is able to go forward, really.
So your point, I think, your first point maybe, is this was a relatively easy case to decide. You didn't have to do 110 pages or whatever the total number was.
Well, there are 4 concurrences and 2 dissents, and none of them is more, I think, than 20 pages. But there's your 120 pages.
Right. And I think what we want to focus on is there's some shrillness, maybe even snarkiness, in the opinion of Justice Comey, what is her first name? Amy Comey Barrett. Yeah. I sometimes call her ABC because she's like the opposite of RBC. Remember the woman that was on the bench, like Kajanji Jackson?
No, people just do initials all the time now, right. AOC and whatnot. I don't know why, really, but they do.
Well, I remember ABC a lot better than Amy Comey Barrett. It's not ABC, it's ACB, right? And
ACB. So
it's ACB.
Basically, you get it wrong if you try to do that.
Try to get it wrong. But she is, and I made the observation that you thought was kind of interesting, which is I look at the court, and then I'll give it to you more, but I want to do the overview of the court. It's like 9 justices on a tic-tac-toe board, and there's like 3 in the right-wing camp, and there's like 3 totally in the left, maybe not totally, but more in the left-wing camp.
Totally, yeah.
And then kind of in the middle, there's Roberts, who's kind of become more of a centrist, I think. And then to his left and right, depending on how you view them, is Amy and Kavanaugh, right? Because they're kind of the young Turks. So if you look at the Supreme Court like it's a law firm, which it isn't, but if you looked at it like it's a firm with 9 partners and there's kind of the managing partner in the middle, which is Roberts. Roberts is not getting any younger. He's got some health issues.
He's 70 to be exact. I haven't heard about his health. He looks okay,
he's got some health,
but he is 70.
Yeah, no, he's got some health issues. And it's clear to me that there is a competition going where there's going to be a question mark of who gets the nod as a successor Chief Justice.
True.
And Amy would like to see herself be that.
Analyses of the political implications of that, but the problem with the analyses is nothing turns on that. Nothing matters except who wins in 2028.
Yeah.
Right? And until we know that, none of this counts for anything, right?
Well,
And everybody knows that.
it's more like the setup for the snarkiness, because it seemed pretty shrill.
Yes, I agree with that.
Right? It seemed like her.
Well, I wouldn't say. Okay, we can discuss that. So basically, for those who don't know, Jack is referring to two things. One, there were two dissents, one by Sotomayor, and in which Jackson and Kagan joined, and the other by Jackson herself, in which nobody joined.
Right.
And I think Jackson's dissent is really kind of screwy, weak, and hysterical. I mean, just a bad opinion. But she's a junior justice. Nobody joined her. It counts for very little. Yet, Barrett, in her opinion in chief, went out of her way to lambaste Jackson and say, basically, Jackson is a poo-poo head. I mean, not to, right? And so my question is why? Why bother? And that's not a rhetorical question. There is an answer to that. And I think you and I have different ideas of what the answer to that is. But it's a real question. Why would you do that?
I think it's a signal.
And by the way, while I'm on the subject of poo-poo head, these opinions circulate before they're published. Mm-hmm. So if Roberts wanted to say, Amy, okay, she's an irritating person, but we're not going to call her a poo-poo head, okay? He could put the kibosh on this, right?
He might have tried to.
But he didn't. So basically, he's endorsing it.
Well, you know, every justice has a choice. I don't think Roberts could pull, once he's assigned Amy to be the principal draftsperson of the majority opinion, I think it's bad form to say, look, you're not taking these sentences out, so I'm pulling it from you. I haven't heard of any instance where that actually.
No, I don't know what the internal operation of the court is like.
Right.
But
and you don't know who really. It seems to me
that if the CJ tells the very junior justice, don't do that, or we need to talk about that, or let's discuss this, en banc, that they will do that. They won't just, rip ahead anyway.
Well, particularly because there's a big push these days from all the judges, the entire federal bench, which probably with all the appellate circuits and the magistrates and everyone else is probably closer to 5,000 actual decision makers for a country that's like 330 million. So not really that many people, but they have staff and research attorneys and so on. But fundamentally, there's a certain demoralization because the rest of those people are all saying to lawyers, be civil in your writing, in your briefing. Don't be shrill. Take all the adverbs out. Don't just give me the facts and give me the law and argue the logic. I don't need all the hysterical stuff. I don't need that. I need to really understand what are the facts and how do they apply to, how does the law apply to those facts? Leave all the rest out. And, in many ways, those two opinions are kind of violating that civility rule.
Well,
to some degree.
Let me suggest this. There are two issues here. One is Justice Jackson a poo-poo head? And to answer that, we would have to, and I want to, go into the merits of the case. Where does the power to grant these injunctions come from? Is Jackson on good ground to uphold the power to do it universally, or is she not on good ground? Right? And then the second question is, assuming she is a poo-poo head, why is Barrett going out of her way to say so? So what do you say we do those two questions, first the substance and then the internal politics then? Right.
I mean, I would say it's hard to imagine a Harvard graduate who served for 8 years as a district judge. I mean, she has some experience as a U.S. district judge before getting elevated. I don't think she was on the Court of Appeals. If she was
for, I think, 2 months.
Yeah, it was very short.
Amazingly short tenure, yes.
Yeah, so she's got some experience, and she certainly has a set of clerks. Now, I don't know, obviously, she signs off on something, so she's making a decision about how shrill she wants to be. On this particular one, it seems to me to be pretty shrill, but I sort of chalk it up to she's biased as a district judge to the same degree that Sotomayor was previously a district judge, that taking away power from a district judge to some degree demoralizes the entire bench. Those people don't work for the $230,000 a year or whatever they make.
No, I agree that any district judge will want to husband the power of the district judge.
Right.
But A, she was wrong. I mean, and B, this is not a mortal wound in the gash of the Constitution. She started on this incredibly high note and opened the throttle from there. And not only that, to go back to the substance, the basis of her argument is what Barrett says it is. Okay, I don't need no historical bullshit about where the power comes from. It's a good power, and judges are good people, and they should exercise it. So when Barrett said, this is judicial supremacy, she's basically right. There's just no check on that power. And Barrett is saying, no, there is a check on that power. And then we have to go into the history of what the check is.
Right.
But regardless of Jackson's history as a district judge, she's out of line. I mean, she is just wrong. And not only wrong, but in a very, as you say, shrill and over-the-top kind of way. Having said that, we then should turn to why Barrett is hitting her with an axe. What's gained by doing that?
Right.
But let me spend like 5 minutes just on the case itself, and then we'll go into this.
Okay, go ahead.
So, and I think it's part of the reason why Barrett wants to hit her with an axe. Basically, the power of district courts to exercise the power to issue injunctions in general comes from a law passed in 1789, according to which U.S. courts have the same powers in equity as basically English courts, because the U.S. courts had barely gotten underway in 1789. So the question is whether the powers of the court in equity as of 1789 included the power to issue these injunctions. That's the issue. And to answer that question...
Yeah, Roberts is the Chief Justice. I guess Thomas is the longest serving justice. Alito is considered very conservative. Sotomayor is the first Latina justice. Kagan was a former Solicitor General. I think she's viewed as pretty liberal. Gorsuch is viewed as conservative. Kavanaugh is viewed as conservative. And then we have Amy Coney Barrett, who I'm not sure where to place her, except she clerked for Justice Scalia.
Scalia, yes.
Scalia was viewed as pretty conservative and pretty much a textualist.
Yeah, but I think you're overdoing the left and right business. I think there's also the question of competence.
Right.
And I think Roberts thinks that Barrett has the right stuff. And I think she's right. He's right. Barrett does have the right stuff. That's what it's about to Roberts. He's an institutionalist, and he doesn't want a poo-poo head taking over the Supreme Court.
Well, have you factored in...
never mind right and left. I don't think he would be particularly thrilled with either of your right, with the Alitos and Thomases taking over.
Okay.
But however that may be, let's get back to the case.
Okay.
So as I was saying, the question is, did the court in equity in 1789 have the power to issue these universal injunctions? Right. It's a historical inquiry. And so Barrett did a historical analysis, and her answer was no. Sotomayor did a historical analysis, finding that there was not the exact power, but something somewhat resembling it called the Bill of Peace that courts did have in 1789. And Sotomayor continues, the universal injunction is a descendant of that. To which Barrett said, not quite. The descendant of the Bill of Peace is the class action lawsuit, which could still be used in this case, but it is not the universal injunction. And the difference is that class actions bind people not parties to the lawsuit, but a specifically defined class of people, not everybody in the country. Whereas the universal injunction is exactly that. It's universal. And that's the key difference. So Sotomayor and Barrett are going back and forth about the powers of the court in 1789. Okay? That's what the case is about, because that's where the power comes from. Then Jackson shows up with her dissent, and she says, this is boring. These arcane, historical, mind-numbing, I think was the phrase she used, historical analyses. Who needs that? What we need is justice and the court standing up against arbitrary power. And so, of course, we're going to do. And Barrett got really offended by this, I think. No, that's so second rate. You gushing about the Constitution has no grounding in the actual powers of the court that were conferred upon it. And that's where you have to go. You have to be able to see that these powers come from a grant of authority. And if you can't do that, you don't have anything. Okay? Are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. And what I'm trying to connect the dots.
So here I am reading Barrett and Sotomayor, and I'm thinking, I don't have an independent slant on the historical equity powers of the court in the 18th century. But I do think that the power to grant universal injunctions is an extremely broad one, and in this case, extremely diffused among 675 separate people. So before you go and say, okay, this collection of individuals, okay, of all kinds of experience, intellect, bias, have the power to do this, the power should be firmly and definitely granted. And maybe it's like Bill of Peace, but then again, maybe it's not like the Bill of Peace. It's just not good enough. I'm just not persuaded. So even though I admit I have very little historical insight to add to the specific question, it seems to me that as a matter of balance between what's at stake and where the power comes from, it seems to me Barrett has the better side of the argument. So, okay, we can have a gentlemanly What are you doing?
I'm just trying to find something about Barrett that I'm trying to remember, but I'll stop.
Yeah, whatever. So regardless of how you come out on the historical question, at least Sotomayor and Barrett agree that it is a historical question. It's about what was done in 1789, like it or not. Okay, it may be arcane, it may be mind-numbing, but that's what the case is about.
Right.
And here Jackson shows up and says, oh no, poo-poo. Okay, I want to do justice. To hell with all that. And no wonder Barrett didn't like it. So is Jackson a poo-poo head? I would say yes. The second question is, why did Barrett go out of her way to say so? And I think the emotional charge to say so comes from she is really bugged by this. She really thinks this is third-rate stuff. And it's possible that Jackson will be the next CJ. I mean, if Biden can make Harris vice president, okay, Pete can make Jackson CJ. Nothing to stop him.
Right.
If he gets in 2028. But that's what it's about. What happens in 2028? Calling Jackson a poo-poo head now does nothing about resolving that. So, question, why did Barrett do it? So I have an answer and you have an answer. My answer is that, yes, the CJ likes Barrett, but some of the more extreme MAGAists don't like her. They think she's kind of squishy, that she kind of thinks that she doesn't, put on the jackboots right away. So maybe we don't want her. Maybe we want somebody harder edge. So maybe Barrett is saying, no, I'm a real badass. Get real. I am. And so maybe that's what it's about. What do you think?
Well, I want to add 3 additional facts that we haven't really talked about before. One is that Jackson has a book that she's promoting. She wrote some sort of memoir that's available. about her journey to the Supreme Court. And to some degree, we're now living in this environment. This is the second point. We're living in this environment where if news is made, like there's going to be a gashing, what did she say? A gashing of the Constitution? She used some word that was pretty.
I've got the exact quote in the outline. Okay, I haven't been using the outline because it's so pumped, but I have it. The court's decision to permit the executive to violate the Constitution, right? Because one district judge said so. Now everybody is debarred from arguing. It's violating the Constitution with respect to anyone who is not yet sued is an existential threat to the rule of law and a gash on the basic tenets of our founding charter that may turn out to be a mortal wound.
Right. So,
right. I mean, here's Amy Barrett, Godzilla stomping on the Constitution.
Right. And so this is very flamboyant language, arguably not very civil, designed to generate headlines, which will sell more books. It will sell more books because people will say, well, who is she and what has she done? Oh, she's got a book. Oh, the book is available. Oh, the book is available as a podcast. Oh, the book is available as an audio. Oh, I'm not saying that's the motivation, but I think we're living in a world where there is, unfortunately, a potential for additional bias caused by the desire to polarize and take a more polarized view and then express it loudly and shrilly and get the headlines because the headlines lead to kind of a bigger profile. Hey, this woman is taking over for maybe Thurgood Marshall. I mean, that's what I thought at one point.
I think that is her her more important motive. Maybe she wants to boost the sales of the book from 110,000 to 130,000.
Or maybe, she wants
not. But yes, she wants to be the new Thurgood Marshall. I agree with that.
She wants the profile to be, I am the first female Black justice. I really think that I'm going to be a force for when the court swaps out two of these older conservative guys. And I want to stake out that position now in some of my dissents. And I'm not going to be embarrassed about them at all because I'm going to see how far this guy Trump goes. Obviously, she has a certain disdain for everything that Trump is doing. I'm sure she's probably even said that in the book or elsewhere. Well, maybe not, but it seems to me pretty obvious. And at the same token, I think Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Barrett, maybe soon Chief Justice Barrett, is saying, look, there is a Constitution and it does require a textual analysis that often requires a history lesson. And it's not about getting untethered in some sort of flamboyant way about, oh, we got to think about what the solar system will say about this and the planet and other galaxies and we're changing everything. And we didn't change anything. You could argue that maybe Rule 65 could have decided.
No, I agree. Right? Barrett has a kind of steel trap mind, and gushing about gashing is not her style at all.
Right.
But still, you don't let fly at every single thing that bugs you when you're writing a Supreme Court opinion.
Correct. And I think the other thing that's maybe playing out here is this was actually viewed as an easy case for the rest of the justices, and it got assigned.
What kind of case? I'm sorry.
An easy case, like they ranked the cases, like when cases.
Oh, I think the substantive case.
Yeah, the case came in
pretty easy. I'm curious to see three things. One, Gorsuch is a literalist, and the literal we haven't gone into it because it's not in the injunction case, but the literal meaning of the 14th Amendment scarcely admits of a doubt. So will he find some way of not being a literalist? And I'll be amazed if he does, but we'll see. And the second thing I'm curious about is how Alito and Thomas will find for Trump, even though it's practically impossible. So we'll see when we get to the substance.
I mean, on the actual birthright citizen substantive issue.
Yeah.
We just have a procedural issue that was relatively easy. It ended up with a lot of text, a lot of history, a lot of back and forth, and a very shrill dissent that no one joined, as you pointed out, by Jackson, which was probably unnecessary. She could have just joined Sotomayor and saved a little bit of ink, because there's not really anything useful from a jurisprudence point of view in what she wrote. You wouldn't read that.
Well, I think you're right. I think she's staking out the territory of embattled fighter for justice.
Right.
Never mind what that, arcane, mind-numbing, boring old law says. I'm here to do the justice thing.
Right. So
and no wonder Barrett doesn't like it.
So if it turns out that AOC becomes president, or even Pete Buttigieg or someone else that's pretty liberal,
any Democrat,
so maybe
a Democrat takes over in 28, Roberts retires in 30. Okay, who's on the court? Kagan and Sotomayor are both. They're also at 70 or so, aren't they?
Right. Correct.
No point in making them Chief Justice. No. There's Jackson, or go find a new candidate. Those are the only choices.
Correct.
And I would not be at all surprised if it was Jackson at all, no matter which Democrat it is.
Right. I mean, there is a question somewhere in this, when you actually look at the potential that this could have hurt Jackson's chances. Like, as much as maybe it is a way to stand out, it could be viewed that the law professors that eventually opine on whether these opinions are high or low quality will say that was an unnecessary detour, and there wasn't anything useful for the future in any of this. And that could actually hurt her when someone says, well, is she someone that's more of a compromiser? Because we're going to have a divided country. We're going to have a divided Supreme Court for probably the rest of our lives, maybe for the rest of our grandkids.
That could be. Right. And were I Pete Buttigieg, I would not. And I also agree with Barrett that Jackson is third rate. And from what I see in organizations, the character of the leader is of overwhelming importance. The older I get, and I'm pretty old, the older I get, the more I think so. And having a bad leader is just a recipe for disaster. And Buttigieg may agree with that she's third rate. We want somebody strong in that role. Right. Or he may say, first black female CJ is just too tempting to pass up. So It could go either way, really.
Yep. And there's a risk. I mean, I don't think any of these guys, the older guys, are really, with the exception of Gorsuch. I think Gorsuch is pretty healthy. He comes from a skiing family. Like, his family owns like half of Aspen, Colorado. Like, if you go to Aspen, Colorado, there's like a Gorsuch this, a Gorsuch that. I mean, they own a lot of land. It's a very wealthy family, and he's a big skier. And I'm sure he's really fit. I don't know about Kavanaugh. I mean, maybe he's okay. Obviously, he's got a bit of a
50 something, 55. I mean,
he's got age, but I don't know if he's got health. Just like Roberts, you could argue, well, he maybe has another 10 years, but he may not. And then you've got these other people that are getting older, right? And I don't know that they're aging that well. And I think they do now. They are sensitive since is it RGB? What was her name? Ruth Bader
Ginsburg.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? Another 3-letter acronym, RBG, made a huge error by not leaving.
She took a chance, and the chance she took was in 2016. She could have retired.
Right.
When I can't even think of his name. Obama was still president.
Right.
But
Correct.
Had she done so, the Senate would not have taken it up anyway, because McConnell would have gotten in the way. And the chances, the quoted odds, were that Hillary would win by 10-1. So she took the 10-1 shot that Hillary would be president, and she lost. But it was not totally crazy. It was a 10-1 shot.
It was a big error, Bob. It was a total big error, because, look, when you're that age and you're starting to get frail, and there's a risk, and that there's the potential of some Murphy's Law coming into play, you just, in 2015 even, maybe even 2014, say, look, my time has come. I want to make sure you can vote in the person you want, which probably would have been Garland, and probably
wouldn't have done any good.
I don't know.
Let's say she did retire in 2015. And McConnell did the same number on her that he did about, who was it? Breyer? I forget. And just not fill the seat for a year, which
Yeah.
he probably would have done.
Well, that's the interesting question to some degree. How long can someone get kind of stymied where a president really wants to put in a new justice, and all of a sudden the Senate plays this game that kind of drags things out until after the election? It's kind of a pity in some ways, but it is what it is. I have absolutely no doubt that Kavanaugh wants to be Chief Justice following Roberts. I have zero doubt about that. Now, maybe his background is so checkered by this, who was that woman's name? The woman that testified against him?
I thought that was bull. I really did. I really did. I don't know if we want to go do a detour into what was wrong with the Kavanaugh confirmation, but I thought it was bull from beginning to end. I really did.
Yeah.
Still do. The idea that something happened at a party when you were in high school 35 years ago, you don't even remember the names of the people who were there. And now somebody who may have been at the party shows up and says, and then you touch my breast, and oh, come on.
How dare you?
How crazy is that?
He's
a drug fraternity kid at a party when he was 17 years old. Enough is enough.
But
that was so crazy.
He's not ever. He's never not going to be remembered for what happened there. It's going to be a constant refrain, right? I don't think he ever escapes it. I don't think that ever happens.
Well, it's on the record for sure. I can't argue with that.
Yeah, I mean, I forget the name of the woman with the squeaky voice who's
we all do.
Works in Palo Alto. Worked at not at Stanford, but at another little college in Palo Alto, a little private college. I forget the name of it. But, Kavanaugh to some degree could have been a mediator on this particular discourse.
No, and to give the devil his due, Kavanaugh's response to this outrageous, baseless attack was itself kind of outrageous and over the top. And my opinion of him suffered not because of touching the breast at the high school party, but because he had no command over himself after that. Yeah. And I don't want him in a leadership role either, really.
Right. But, there is this desire, from a law firm analogy point of view, when there are competing Turks in their 50s, and that's the way I think of Kavanaugh, Jackson, as well as Barrett. They are the young Turks. They're the three young Turks. They have the potential. They have the potential to be the next Chief Justice, and they would.
Well, it's pretty clear what Roberts thinks. It's pretty clear what Roberts thinks about the succession, and I agree with him. And I want to ask you: do you agree with him? Do you think she has the right stuff?
Barrett?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a little early, to be honest. I mean, I think you'd have to kind of let at least 20 opinions get issued to really understand what she brings to the table. What does she have? Maybe 4 or 5 so far, max. I mean, I think I haven't counted.
Well, we would have to go back and not merely her opinions, but her conduct at oral argument. And I do remember the other case we did, 303 Creative, the Colorado website case.
Right.
And I think it was Gorsuch, who wrote the opinion. But I thought Barrett's questioning was so sharp.
Right.
We actually did the whole transcript at that time.
I remember.
So she impressed me, and now she's impressed me again. And I've got nothing against her. Once I get past the Mead Act, she took to Jackson.
Right. You would say, if you were editing her stuff, just take this out. It's unnecessary. Right.
Yeah.
And that there might have been a bit of a law school.
If anything, she elevated Jackson by doing that.
Right. Right. You could say she actually played into the hands of Jackson.
She certainly helped Jackson define Jackson as the lone rebel upholding the flag of freedom stuff. Yeah.
Right. Right. So somewhere in this, it seems to me we should see or be watchful for whether a pattern emerges between the two of them. in some fashion because somehow they think they are kind of the opposite ends of a polarized spectrum. And
I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. This is the beginning of the history. And if they go at each other every time the court publishes an opinion from now on, it will be noticed.
right.
I mean, that's why you shouldn't do these things, because you're kind of slanting future history and not in a good way.
Right. The other thing that may be playing out here is the clerks are also products of the polarization that we've seen in America. The clerks that every generation become either more and more liberal or more conservative. And the clerks themselves may be writing drafts of opinions that are a bit over the top because they're kind of living a life where there isn't as much recognition, particularly through COVID, of real deep conversations that are intellectual exchanges. It's more like shouting into a vacuum. And so the shouting is getting louder and louder, just like the political party shouting is getting louder and louder. I just finished a book and I wanted to mention this because I think it's good reading.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, we have enough of that going on without Amy, taking up the axe.
Right.
So, yes, I agree. She was out of line. Okay, you were going to say?
The book that you need to read, and it fits right into this, but we won't cover it tonight, is Why Are We So Polarized? It's a guy.
Okay, why? We can do a couple of sentences.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the book, really the thesis of the book is that human beings are fundamentally people that create an us versus them camp to start out with, just as social animals.
Okay, but that's like a universal property of people. But the question is not universal property, but rate of change. Why is it becoming more so?
So the theory that he pronounces is what's happening is social media creates an amplifier, and people don't really get any real reaction about their amplifier in what might be called what typically happens face to face between people. You can sense whether the amplifier is too loud or too soft. And the Facebook type amplifier, the Instagram amplifier, the Twitter amplifiers, there's no real easy way to judge whether a point is being landed. So the amplification of whatever assertion is being made, like take Trump versus Musk, there's huge amplification going on. Those guys seem to be at each other's throats in a big way. It itself creates this re-amplification and greater polarization as people kind of retweet the message or adopt and re-amplify. If they really like it, they kind of re-amplify it. And if they don't like it, they go the other way. They get even more aggressive going the other way. And look, it's gone so far as a threat by Trump that if this tax bill doesn't get passed, he's basically going to seek to crush whoever goes against him. And Musk enters the fray saying, if this tax bill passes, I will form a new party and I will make sure that I will use all of my money. If it's the last thing I do on planet Earth, meaning, hey, I'm heading to Mars anyway, I'm going to do whatever it takes to cause a destruction of the Republican Party and maybe the Democratic Party as well. I mean, those are pretty loud sounding words for two billionaires, and maybe Musk is about to become a trillionaire here shortly.
Yeah, well, Trump is certainly coining it as fast as possible, but even so, he's nothing like in the Musk bracket.
I mean, Musk has 27 years or more of runway.
Yeah, but there's one thing wrong with Musk as a political leader, which is everybody hates his guts.
Why? And he's not an American. He's not an American.
That's kind of a problem.
He's not an American. I mean, he can't be president of the United States.
No, he can't be president.
Right.
But nobody's going to follow his flag, president or not president.
Well,
we'll see.
There's a group of people that believe that he's super intelligent and that he's super wealthy and that he does want to make changes to America. And he does
and some of the things he's done are unquestionably kind of good.
Right.
And kind of strong and kind of exceptional.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm a truck driver in Oklahoma. I mean, none of this means crap to me.
Right. No, that's true. But in fact, most of America, most of the time, pays zero attention to the U.S. Supreme Court. They couldn't even tell you the names of any of these
Exactly.
9 people. If you show them a picture of them, they couldn't tell you the names. And they couldn't put the names to the picture either. And most of
No,
them
that's why I
don't really care. They don't care.
No, that's why I think Barrett is basically looking to her shore up her position on the right, if you want to do the political thing, by
Right.
being a tough broad instead of a squishy centrist.
Right.
I mean, if it's not about that, I don't know what it is about.
That's what it is. And it's also an adoption of what might be called her boss, really, the person that she studied under. What was his name? Justice Scalia, not Scalia. Scalia, Justice Scalia. Here I am not remembering his name. Justice Scalia was her mentor, and I think she's pretty much saying, I'm going to take the same views. I'm going to ask, what would Antonio Scalia's views?
I think.
What would it be? What would his views be on this?
He would certainly say we have to look at the history.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
There's no doubt in my mind about that. And he would certainly look at 1789 and the Equity Act. And if somebody said, "Oh, mind-numbing arcana, too boring for words," he would really piss on them.
Correct.
Okay.
Now the question is,
I mean, he was great friends with Ruth Bader Ginsburg because he thought Ruth had quality. He would not think that about. Yeah.
I think that's right. But let me ask you, do you think that Jackson is adopting a profile to be more like Thurgood Marshall? And she's thinking to herself on tough questions, what would Thurgood Marshall have written? Would he have written something different?
I heard Thurgood Marshall in person, and for her to think she is in his league is nonsense. She is not in any way.
Well,
but she's adopting the mantle of the great civil rights leader. So she's not thinking about how Thurgood Marshall decided cases or what his position in American jurisprudence is. She is thinking about how I, like Thurgood Marshall, can spend my life holding the flag high. So she's a flag waving. Yeah.
Right. So, Bob, we've come to our hour. I think we've exhausted this topic for now, but there will be certainly eventually, I don't know what year, maybe a couple of years from now, maybe next year, a substantive set of rulings on birthright citizenship that really is the main event. And all we know right now is there's probably going to be a bunch of circuit splits on what it is that plays out.
I'd say I will be amazed to see how Alito and Thomas come out. Not that I don't believe it'll be to uphold Trump, but how the hell they're going to manage it. Gorsuch is interesting because he will be torn between his literalist. Now I'm the one who's forgetting a word. Between his literalist bent and his political allegiance. So we'll see.
Right. Let me end with this remark. Just think for a second about what could have been the way this whole opinion was structured, which is, look, the truth is we have these, let's call them 5,000 judges, some on the Court of Appeals, some magistrates, obviously many district judges. And we actually do want a diversity of opinion on questions that confound us. Because ultimately then what gets the circuit split and then gets the Supreme Court to really understand kind of every argument and every angle is a team of rivals, all very smart people, mostly, all pretty dedicated. They don't do it for the money.
I have no argument with that idea that we should have lots of district judges issuing lots of opinions. The problem is one of them can rule in favor of the plaintiff and the world comes to a halt.
Right. Now we don't have that. It would be
fine with me if some districts issued one rule, other districts issued another, the circuits tried to resolve it, the circuits are split, goes to the Supremes. That's the system working. This is the system in a state of paralysis.
Right, but now arguably it gets fixed, right? To some degree, this ruling
Well, it'll have to now, yeah.
Right. This ruling effectively says we will accept more circuit splits, we'll accept more diversity of opinion, and then basically the Supreme Court either harmonizes it or makes a choice.
Bunts.
And it does indirectly give the Supreme Court more power. As much as Jackson is saying, no, the Supreme Court's going to lose power and all these judges are going to lose power, it actually may do the opposite. It actually may make the Supreme Court have more credibility in the long run as opposed to less credibility. The sniping doesn't help, but basically from the point of view of the
stakes of litigation are lower in the sense that you're not going to get a universal injunction. You're going to get something that affects the District of Massachusetts.
Right.
Maybe that means less litigation to begin with because there's less oomph behind winning. I don't know.
Well, that's another angle. Angle. Or maybe people start figuring out how to use class actions in some cases. That's a whole different process with a whole different certification process and a bunch of other stuff. But they haven't written, Rule 23 dealing with class actions out of the federal rules. They're there.
No.
And I assume
I don't know if we want to go into this because I didn't, because I'm not the FRCP maven. You are. Do you think Rule 23 is an adequate remedy for plaintiffs?
Well, I think right now there's a lot of overhead to it. I think right now that most class action lawyers never try a case. They deal with procedural issues over and over again in ways that dramatically increase the cost of the litigation and therefore lead to these mega victories of legal fees without really any substantive trial. Often it's just all this procedural stuff is playing a huge role. And there's something to me that's very wrong about that. Now, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix a lot of things. I mean, my general view is most cases can be decided after a couple of hours if you get everyone to put their cards on the table and turn most of them face up. But the truth is most people like playing the poker game over and over and over again, and they don't turn cards face up even during a trial. And they try to pull one over on both a judge and a jury, and if they are not adept at pulling that off, they get crucified. But conceptually, very few businesses are willing to go to trial. There's a great scene in one of the recent shows that's on Apple TV where the lawyer says to this, wrongfully terminated employee, well, we don't have to win a trial. We just have to get beyond summary judgment, because once that happens, we have a trial date, and man, your employer is never going to want that dirty laundry to be shown at a trial. And that's it. And he says, that's all we have to do. We just have to get beyond summary judgment. And it's like a very poignant statement of how much civil litigation works in America, which is very few cases actually go to trial, and very few judges have patience for lengthy trials anymore. And there are time limits that are set. And the truth is most people, most of the time, don't feel comfortable with the risk that they have to get very complex things across quickly to people who mostly don't care. I mean, most jurors don't care. They'll carry out their duty, but the reality is their head is not focused on exactly what's going down. And we'll see what happens in this Diddy Combs case. Obviously, it looks like he's lost. The reports are the jury came back saying, well, we have one area where we can't.
I think he did. I think he has. I think I partly lost. I think he was acquitted on the worst charges, but he was found guilty on charges which, though not the worst, can still put him in the can for a couple of decades.
Did that just happen? Because I heard that they basically said we can't reach agreement.
Yeah, check it out. I think so.
Oh, because I thought there was no revelation. Okay, I'll look at it, because last I saw there was no actual decision, but it sounded like it went against him. To me, it sounded like the whole thing went against him. But you're saying no, there's actually been a ruling there's been an actual verdict.
Yes.
Mixed verdict. You're right. This must have just happened. Convicted of prostitution-related offense, but acquitted Wednesday of sex trafficking.
Mixed, but there were so many counts that even being convicted on the less worse half of the counts is enough to do him for a while.
And he was denied bail, right? Okay.
Yes.
So now what? potentially that could be a 25-year. Obviously, he'll get a pardon from Trump, right? But
why?
Well, because
why? You said the same thing about Sam Bankman-Fried. What is Sam to Trump?
It hasn't happened yet.
He's got this nasty mother who keeps telling the world that Trump is a fascist. Why would Trump do him a favor?
Well,
why would he do Combs a favor?
Yeah, 2 counts: transportation to engage in prostitution, maximum sentence of 10 years. Freedom of 3 charges, 2 of which carried a mandatory 15 years and a maximum of life. Ouch. Wow. That just happened. You get the news faster than I do, Bob, and you're in Laos.
I get the news the same time as everybody else.
It's amazing, right?
It is. It really is. When I taught geography at Cal, I said, geography is different now because time and space don't exist anymore.
Oh, that's true. That's a good comment. Yeah, it's a good comment. All right. Well, we'll talk again. I'll keep you.
Yeah, I hope so. This was fun.
You look good.
Okay,
you
talk
look
to you
great.
soon. Cool with me.
All right. Thanks very much. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.